In a world where fame shines bright, tragedy can strike without warning. Tonight, we uncover the heartbreaking story of Manuel and Pamela Chavez, the glamorous couple whose lives were shattered in a single night of fire. Yes, you heard that right. Jay and Pamela Chavez's house caught fire today. Manuel's saved cash $250K was destroyed in a fire. Jay's wife Pamela Chavez's conditions is very critical. 40% of his body has been burned. Pamela Chavez's condition is very critical. Pamela Chavez has been admitted to the hospital and is receiving medical care. She is fighting death. This is not just a story of loss. It is a story of resilience, of love tested by flames, and of questions that may never find answers. Welcome to the untold truth of Jay and Pamela's night of fire. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening in Manuel and Pamela Chavez's household. The couple, known for their glamorous lifestyle and star presence, had just returned from a quiet dinner. Their home, a sprawling residence filled with memories and luxury, stood as a fortress of success. But as midnight approached, that fortress became a prison of fire. Neighbors recall the first signs: a faint smell of smoke drifting in through the air, then a sudden glow that lit up the night sky. Within minutes, flames engulfed the house, spreading with terrifying speed. The fire alarm blared, but the chaos inside was already uncontrollable. Jay rushed to save Pamela, who was trapped in the bedroom as thick smoke filled the hallways. His desperate attempt to reach her left him with severe burns, covering nearly 40% of his body. Yet his focus was not on his pain, it was on Pamela. Pamela's condition was far worse. By the time firefighters arrived, she had sustained critical injuries. Her body bore the marks of the fire's cruelty, and her breathing was shallow. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors immediately began the fight to keep her alive. For Jay, watching Pamela fight for survival was more agonizing than his own wounds. The fire consumed everything: furniture, memories, and even Jay's carefully saved $250,000 in cash. The money hidden inside the house was reduced to ashes within minutes. What had taken years to save vanished in the blink of an eye. But for Jay, the true loss was not financial. It was the sight of Pamela battling death. Outside, the street was filled with sirens, flashing lights, and stunned neighbors. Some whispered in disbelief, others cried openly. The couple who had once symbolized glamour now stood as victims of fate's cruel twist. The night of flames was not just a tragedy, it was the beginning of a story that would shake their lives forever. For years, Manuel and Pamela Chavez's home had been more than just a residence. It was a symbol of their journey, their triumphs, and their love. Nestled in a quiet neighborhood, the house stood tall with its elegant architecture, manicured lawns, and walls that echoed with laughter, celebrations, and countless memories. Every corner told a story: the grand living room where friends gathered, the kitchen where Pamela perfected her favorite recipes, and the study where Jay planned his future ventures. It was their sanctuary, their pride, their dream. But in a single night, that dream was reduced to rubble and ash. As firefighters battled the inferno, the once beautiful home collapsed under the weight of flames. The roof caved in, windows shattered, and the walls that had sheltered them crumbled into blackened fragments. The air was thick with smoke, carrying the bitter scent of destruction. Neighbors watched helplessly, their eyes reflecting the horror of seeing a cherished landmark vanish before them. Inside, the devastation was absolute. The family photographs that lined the walls were gone, their frames melted beyond recognition. Pamela's cherished jewelry, Jay's collection of rare books, and the furniture they had carefully chosen, all destroyed. Even the smallest tokens of their love, like handwritten notes tucked away in drawers, were consumed by fire. What remained was a haunting silence, broken only by the crackle of dying embers. For Jay, the loss of the house was more than material. It was emotional. This was the place where he and Pamela had built their life together, where they had dreamed of raising a family, where they had celebrated milestones. To see it vanish in flames was like watching a part of their soul being torn away. Standing outside, bandaged and burned, Jay's eyes lingered on the ruins, his heart heavy with grief. He knew that no amount of money could rebuild the memories that had been lost. Pamela, fighting for her life in the hospital, was unaware of the destruction. But Jay carried the burden of knowing that when she woke, if she woke, their home would no longer be there. The house of dreams had turned into ashes, leaving behind a void that could never truly be filled. Among the ashes of J. Manuel and Pamela Chavez's home lay a secret that few knew about. A carefully saved fortune of $250,000 in cash. For years, Jay had tucked away this money, a safety net for the future, a symbol of discipline and foresight. It wasn't just currency, it was the embodiment of his hard work, his sacrifices, and his dreams of security for Pamela and himself. But on that fateful night, the flames showed no mercy, and the treasure vanished in smoke. The fire tore through the house with relentless hunger, consuming everything in its path. Hidden in a secure compartment, the cash was supposed to be untouchable. Yet, as the inferno raged, even steel and concrete could not withstand the heat. By the time firefighters reached the ruins, the compartment had collapsed, leaving behind nothing but charred fragments. The crisp bills that once represented hope were reduced to blackened dust, scattered among the debris. For Jay, the loss was devastating. He had always believed that money could provide a cushion against life's uncertainties, that $250,000 was meant to protect Pamela, to ensure their comfort, to stand as a shield against hardship. Now, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. The cruel irony was unbearable. While Pamela fought for her life in the hospital, the very savings meant to safeguard her future had been destroyed. Neighbors whispered about the tragedy, some shocked that Jay had kept such a large sum in cash at home. Others sympathized, understanding that for Jay, it wasn't about banks or investments. It was about trust, about keeping his fortune close, within the walls of the house he cherished. But the fire had stripped him of that trust, leaving him vulnerable in ways he had never imagined. Standing outside the ruins, Jay's bandaged hands trembled as he thought of the years it had taken to build that savings. Each dollar had been earned with effort, each bundle stacked with hope. Now, all that remained was the haunting image of smoke rising from the place where his treasure once lay. The financial loss was staggering, but the emotional wound cut deeper. It wasn't just money, it was the future, gone in flames. As the flames died down and the smoke cleared, the true battle had only just begun. Pamela Chavez, J. Manuel's beloved wife, was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Her body bore the cruel marks of fire, burns covering large portions, her breathing shallow, her pulse faint. Doctors and nurses moved swiftly, their faces tense, knowing that every second mattered. The sterile white walls of the emergency ward became the new battlefield, where Pamela's life hung in the balance. Jay, himself suffering from burns across nearly 40% of his body, refused to leave her side. Bandaged and weak, he sat in the waiting area, his eyes fixed on the doors of the intensive care unit. Every time they swung open, his heart raced, hoping for news, any news, that Pamela was stable. But the updates were grim. Her condition remained critical, and the doctors warned that the next 48 hours would decide everything. Inside the ICU, machines beeped steadily, monitoring Pamela's fragile state. Tubes and wires connected her to life support, a stark reminder of how close she was to the edge. Nurses whispered instructions, adjusting medications, cooling her burns, and fighting infections that threatened to spread. Pamela's body was fighting, but the fire had left deep scars, both physical and unseen. She was unconscious, her face pale, her spirit caught between life and death. For Jay, the pain was unbearable. He had always seen Pamela as his strength, his partner in every triumph and trial. Now, watching her struggle to breathe, he felt powerless. His own injuries burned with agony, but his heart ached more for her suffering. He whispered her name, hoping she could hear him through the haze of machines and medication. "Pamela, fight! Please fight!" he murmured, his voice trembling. Outside the hospital, fans and neighbors gathered, sending prayers and messages of support. Social media lit up with hashtags, urging strength for Pamela and Jay. Yet, behind the screens and headlines, the reality was raw and merciless. Pamela was fighting death itself, and Jay was clinging to hope with every ounce of his soul. The fire had taken their home, their savings, and their peace. Now it threatened to take Pamela. But even in the darkest hours, Jay believed in her strength. The battle was far from over, and Pamela's fight for life had only just begun. In the sterile corridors of the hospital, J. Manuel sat quietly, his body wrapped in bandages, his spirit weighed down by grief. The burns across his skin were painful, but they were nothing compared to the torment inside his heart. He had always been the strong one, the star, the figure of resilience and confidence. Yet now, in the aftermath of the fire, Jay was reduced to silence, his tears hidden from the world. Doctors urged him to rest, but Jay refused. His eyes remained fixed on Pamela's room, where machines hummed and monitors flickered, each sound a reminder of her fragile state. He barely spoke, only nodding when nurses checked his wounds. His silence was not indifference. It was the language of a man broken, a man who had lost more than possessions, more than wealth. He had lost the sense of safety, the certainty that tomorrow would be kind. At times, Jay would retreat to a quiet corner of the hospital, away from the cameras and curious eyes. There, he allowed himself to cry. The tears came slowly, silently, and as if he feared the world would judge him for weakness. But in truth, those tears were his strength. They were the release of emotions too heavy to carry alone. He whispered Pamela's name, his voice trembling, his words filled with desperation. "You have to come back. I can't do this without you." The weight of the $250,000 loss pressed on him too, but money seemed trivial compared to Pamela's fight for life. He thought of the nights they had planned their future, the dreams they had shared, and the laughter that had once filled their home. Now all of it felt distant, like echoes fading into darkness. His tears were not just for Pamela's suffering, they were for the life they had built together, now threatened by fate's cruelty. Outside, the media painted Jay as a man of resilience, a star enduring tragedy. But behind the headlines, he was simply a husband, broken and vulnerable. His silent tears told the truth the cameras could never capture, that fame offers no shield against pain, and that love, when tested by fire, reveals the deepest wounds. Jay's silent tears were not the end of his story. They were the beginning of a long, uncertain journey. A journey where hope and despair walked hand in hand, and where every breath Pamela took was a fragile miracle. The night of the fire did not only scar J. Manuel and Pamela Chavez, it shook the entire neighborhood. For years, their home had been a beacon of elegance, admired by passers-by and cherished by those who lived nearby. When the flames erupted, the community witnessed not just the destruction of a house, but the unraveling of a dream they had all admired from a distance. Neighbors recall the chaos vividly. Some were awakened by the piercing sound of sirens, others by the eerie glow of fire reflecting against their windows. Families rushed outside, clutching children, staring in disbelief as Jay and Pamela's residence was swallowed by flames. It was like watching a nightmare unfold in real life. One neighbor whispered, her voice trembling. We couldn't believe it was happening to them, Jay and Pamela, of all people. Many tried to help, but the fire was merciless. A few neighbors grabbed hoses, buckets, anything they could find, but the inferno was beyond control. The heat was unbearable, forcing them to retreat as firefighters battled the blaze. Some cried openly, others stood frozen, their faces pale with shock. The sight of Jay, burned and desperate, trying to reach Pamela, left an indelible mark on everyone who saw it. His screams for her echoed through the night, haunting those who listened. In the aftermath, the neighborhood became a gathering place of grief. People spoke in hushed tones, sharing fragments of what they had seen. Some recounted the moment Pamela was carried out, unconscious and fragile, her body covered in burns. Others remembered Jay collapsing in pain, his tears mixing with soot and ash. The tragedy was not just theirs, it belonged to everyone who had witnessed it. By morning, the once proud house stood as a blackened skeleton, a grim reminder of how quickly life can change. Neighbors walked past slowly, some leaving flowers, others offering prayers. Children asked questions their parents struggled to answer. Why did this happen? Will Pamela be okay? The community had no answers, only sorrow. For Jay and Pamela, the fire was personal devastation. For their neighbors, it was a collective wound. The shock lingered in every corner of the street, a silence heavy with grief. The couple who had once symbolized glamour now symbolized tragedy, and the neighborhood would never forget the night their world turned to ashes. By dawn, the tragedy of Manuel and Pamela Chavez had already escaped the confines of their neighborhood and entered the global spotlight. What began as whispers among neighbors quickly transformed into headlines splashed across television screens, online portals, and social media feeds. The fire was no longer just a local disaster. It had become a story consumed by millions. News outlets raced to cover the incident, each framing the narrative with urgency and drama. "Star couple's home reduced to ashes," read one headline. Another declared, "Pamela Chavez fights for life after tragic blaze." The details spread rapidly. Jay's $250,000 savings destroyed, Pamela's critical condition, Jay's own burns. Reporters camped outside the hospital, cameras flashing as they tried to capture every glimpse of Jay's weary figure. The media storm was relentless, feeding on tragedy, amplifying every detail. Social media magnified the chaos. Fans flooded platforms with messages of support, prayers, and heartbreak. Hashtags like #PrayForPamela and #StrengthForJ trended worldwide. Yet, alongside the compassion came speculation. Some questioned the cause of the fire. Was it electrical failure, negligence, or something more sinister? Rumors swirled, theories multiplied, and the truth became tangled in a web of conjecture. For Jay, already burdened with grief, the noise of speculation was another wound. Pamela's condition became the focal point of coverage. Updates from the hospital were dissected by anchors and debated by commentators. Every statement from doctors was broadcast live, every change in her health analyzed as if the world itself was holding its breath. The couple's private pain had become public property, their tragedy consumed by an audience hungry for answers. Jay's silence only fueled the frenzy. His refusal to speak to reporters was interpreted in countless ways. Some saw it as dignity, others as mystery. The cameras captured his bandaged hands, his hollow eyes, his quiet presence, and turned them into symbols of resilience. Yet behind those images was a man simply trying to survive, clinging to hope for his wife. The media storm was both a blessing and a curse. It brought awareness, sympathy, and support from strangers across the globe. But it also stripped Jay and Pamela of privacy, turning their suffering into spectacle. In the glare of headlines and hashtags, their tragedy was magnified, their pain broadcast for the world to see. As the smoke cleared and the ruins cooled, the questions began. How could such a devastating fire erupt in the home of Manuel and Pamela Chavez? What had caused the inferno that destroyed their lives in minutes? The investigation was swift, with authorities determined to uncover the truth behind the tragedy. Firefighters who had battled the blaze returned to the scene the next morning, combing through the charred remains. The once grand residence was now a skeleton of blackened beams and collapsed walls. Every step crunched against ash and debris. Every corner whispered of destruction. Investigators searched for clues: faulty wiring, gas leaks, or any sign of foul play. The fire's intensity made answers difficult, but the need for clarity was urgent. Neighbors speculated endlessly. Some believed it was an electrical fault, pointing to flickering lights they had noticed in the past. Others whispered darker theories. Was it arson, a deliberate act meant to harm Jay and Pamela? The rumors spread quickly, fueled by the media storm already surrounding the couple. Yet, officials urged patience, reminding the public that investigations take time and evidence must speak louder than speculation. Jay himself was too consumed by Pamela's condition to focus on the investigation. His burns left him weak, but his spirit was tethered to the hospital, where Pamela fought for her life. Still, he knew the truth mattered. The fire had not only destroyed their home and savings, it had nearly taken Pamela from him. Understanding its cause was the only way to make sense of the chaos. Authorities interviewed witnesses, piecing together timelines. They examined appliances, wiring, and the remnants of the house's structure. Every fragment was cataloged, every possibility considered. The investigation became a puzzle, with pieces scattered among ashes. Yet, the weight of public attention made the process heavier. Everyone wanted answers, but answers were not easily found. As days passed, the mystery deepened. No clear cause emerged, leaving the tragedy shrouded in uncertainty. For Jay and Pamela, the lack of closure was another wound. The fire had stolen their home, their savings, and their peace. Now, it threatened to leave them with questions that might never be answered. The investigation had begun, but its path was long and uncertain. And in the silence of the ruins, the truth waited, hidden among ashes, waiting to be revealed. In the days following the fire, as Manuel and Pamela Chavez faced their darkest hours, a wave of compassion began to rise. What the flames had destroyed, the people around them sought to rebuild. Not in bricks and mortar, but in love, support, and solidarity. Amidst the ashes, hope flickered like a fragile flame refusing to die. Family members rushed to Jay's side, offering strength where his own had faltered. Pamela's relatives gathered at the hospital, their prayers echoing through the sterile corridors. Friends from near and far called, visited, and sent messages of encouragement. They reminded Jay that he was not alone, that even in tragedy, bonds of love could withstand the fire's cruelty. Their presence became a lifeline, a reminder that community could carry what one man could not. Fans, too, played their part. Across social media, strangers united in empathy. Thousands of messages poured in, filled with prayers, blessings, and words of resilience. Some shared stories of their own battles with tragedy, hoping to inspire Jay and Pamela to keep fighting. Others organized fundraisers, determined to help Jay recover from the financial devastation of losing $250,000 in cash. The digital world became a chorus of hope, proving that compassion could travel faster than flames. Neighbors, still shaken by the night of horror, rallied together. They brought food, offered shelter, and stood vigil outside the hospital. Children drew pictures of hearts and angels, delivering them to Jay with shy smiles. Their innocence carried a message stronger than words, that even in loss, love survives. The street that had once echoed with sirens now echoed with solidarity. Each act of kindness a brick in the rebuilding of Jay and Pamela's spirit. For Jay, the support was overwhelming. His silent tears found comfort in the embrace of family, the prayers of fans, and the kindness of neighbors. Though Pamela remained critical, the hope surrounding them gave him strength to believe that miracles were possible. The fire had taken much, but it had also revealed something profound: the resilience of human compassion. Hope amidst the ashes was not just a phrase, it was a reality. It was the light that guided Jay through the darkness, the strength that whispered to Pamela as she fought for life. And though the future remained uncertain, one truth was clear: love, in all its forms, had survived the fire. As days turned into weeks, the tragedy of Manuel and Pamela Chavez remained etched in the hearts of those who followed their story. The fire had taken their home, their savings, and nearly Pamela's life. Yet, even as the smoke cleared, the questions lingered. Questions that refused to fade. Questions that haunted Jay and everyone who cared for them. The investigation had yet to provide definitive answers. Was the fire caused by faulty wiring, a neglected appliance, or something more sinister? Rumors of arson continued to swirl, whispered in hushed tones across social media and neighborhood gatherings. Some believed it was an accident, others suspected foul play. But without evidence, the truth remained elusive, buried beneath the ashes of their once proud home. Pamela's condition, though stabilized, was still critical. Doctors worked tirelessly, but her recovery was uncertain. Each day was a battle, each hour a fragile victory. Jay, though scarred and weakened, remained steadfast by her side. His silent tears had given way to quiet resilience, but the weight of unanswered questions pressed heavily on his spirit. He wanted closure, not just for himself, but for Pamela, for the life they had built together, now fractured by tragedy. The media, relentless as ever, continued to speculate. Headlines asked what the future held for Jay and Pamela. Commentators debated whether they could rebuild their lives, whether Pamela would survive, whether Jay could recover from both emotional and financial devastation. Yet, amidst the noise, one truth stood clear: their story was far from over. For the community, the fire was a reminder of life's fragility. Neighbors still spoke of that night, their voices tinged with sorrow. Fans continued to send prayers, clinging to hope that Pamela would pull through. And Jay, though broken, carried the burden of their collective grief, his silence speaking louder than words. The tragedy of Jay and Pamela was not just about loss. It was about resilience, love, and the haunting power of questions left unanswered. As the world watched, one thought lingered. Would the truth ever be revealed? And would Pamela's fight end in triumph or tragedy? When the flames die, what remains? Is it the ashes of what was lost, or the strength to rebuild? Will Pamela's fight for life end in survival, or will fate claim her too soon? And as Jay stands amidst ruins, scarred but unbroken, will the truth of that night ever come to light? These are the questions that linger, the mysteries that haunt, and the story that continues beyond the fire. What do you believe lies ahead for Jay and Pamela? More update. Jay and Pamela stars on their heartbreak over her family's disapproval of relationship. What condition do TLC's Jay and Pamela stars have? And star Pamela Chavez opens up about her dating life before meeting Jay Manuel. Jay Manuel and Pamela Chavez's health condition, their genetic disorder, explained. I will explain everything. Pamela Chavez, who stars in Jay and Pamela, has been cut off from her family since she started seeing Jay Manuel. Pamela moved across state lines to live with Jay in the basement of his parents' house because her parents don't like the relationship. Pamela's family doesn't like it. But she and Jay, who both have osteogenesis imperfecta type 3OI or brittle bone illness, are still together. They talked to Swoon about how they're dealing with being apart. Pamela said, "It's a lot of heartbreak," as you witnessed in the premiere episode. I think it's both good and bad, but I know I'm not the only one. I'm sure someone out there wants a perfect cookie-cutter family, but that's not the reality, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. She also didn't say anything bad about her family and said they helped shape who she is. She stated, "It's just amazing that even if your relationship with your family isn't perfect, there is some value to it that shaped me into the person I am and got me ready to start a new chapter in my life with more family, like my husband and in-laws and all that. It's been a blessing." The new TLC show features the pair telling their story. Jay talked about being a transgender man during the premiere. He said that he is leaning into becoming his true self. He said, "I feel like there's nothing more powerful, at least for me, than sharing your truth and being who you are, and of course, sharing it on this big of a platform. It's very different than being with folks you only sort of know, but I believe there's something to be said for being true to yourself and being honest, and I think that's something that will come across throughout the show. It's not only about being transgender, it's also about being true to who we are as humans and all that makes us who we are." The couple wants to move out of Jay's parents' basement and into their own place, which is part of their trip. He remarked, "We're definitely thankful for what my parents have done and given us that space. You're going to see us deal with that and try to plan a wedding and all these other things. We're still figuring that out, but independence is very important. I think we've made a lot of progress, at least for where we are. We're a lot closer to that goal than we were when we first talked about it." They met on the internet. Pamela had been unmarried for 2 years when she met her spouse. She stated she was starting to be more open to finding someone. In 2022, they got engaged. She said, "He really changed my mind about marriage and everything, even moving to a different state. I couldn't deny it anymore. He really brought so much into my life. I'm like, okay, we're not just friends." Pamela said, "The universe really blessed me because I wasn't looking for anything. So I got really lucky, to be honest. It worked out for me. I was actually surprised that I gave her my number since I'm usually pretty shy about that kind of thing. I just felt like I had to do it, and it turned out to be a terrific thing for me." What condition do TLC's Jay and Pamela stars have? The newest stars on TLC are Jay Manuel and Pamela Chavez, who will tell their own unique narrative. They both have the same rare genetic condition since birth. The first episode of Jay and Pamela will air on TLC on Tuesday, March 4th. It will go into great detail about Manuel and Chavez's disabilities and how they deal with it. Everything we know so far is below. Manuel and Chavez have osteogenesis imperfecta type 3OI, which makes their bones weak. The National Organization for Rare Diseases says that OI is a genetic disorder characterized by increased bone fragility, low bone mass, and susceptibility to bone fractures. In a trailer for the episode, Manuel said, "We're both little people People told Manuel that he wouldn't live past 5 years old, and they didn't even think Chavez would make it to 1 year old. Manuel said, "We've broken over 400 bones together, and it can be as easy as getting out of bed." A doctor told Jay and Pamela in a clip from the premiere of their show to eat more calcium. People with osteogenesis imperfecta are more likely to get blood clots. The doctor replied, "There is a higher chance of problems with wound healing." People with scoliosis often have very tiny lung volumes, which can lead to lung problems that kill them. So, sadly, that can cause a clot to form that goes up and into the lungs, which can clearly be deadly. Manuel said, "We're both 3 foot 4 inches tall," while Chavez said there is some disagreement regarding their real heights, and said her partner is actually 3 foot -3. Manuel said, "It doesn't matter either way because we're short." Manuel's parents live in Atlanta, Georgia, where the couple lives. They live in the basement of their parents' house, but on the TLC show, they are hunting for their own place. It's not easy for them to find a place that works for them because they utilize power chairs. A press statement for the series said, "They want to move out of the basement and into their own place one day, but they can't agree on where that should be." Jay is delighted to stay in the suburbs, but Pamela, who has been living in the basement for years, wants to be in the city. But it's harder than they thought to locate a facility that matches their needs as disabled power chair users. In another tape, Manuel's father, Rafael, said, "Of course we support their decision to move out. But what if something happens to them and we're not there? I worry for them because of that." Jay and Pamela tell the story of how the couple became husband and wife. Chavez called Manuel her soon-to-be husband in an Instagram picture from January 2024. They haven't said anything new about their relationship, but in one of Chavez's postings dated January 2025, Manuel is wearing a ring on his left hand. Star Pamela Chavez opens up about her dating life before meeting Jay Manuel. Pamela Chavez, who stars in the reality show Jay and Pamela on TLC, talked about her dating life before she met her fiancé, Jay Manuel. Pamela, who is 30 years old, said in a teaser from a future episode that TLC's official Instagram page released on April 12th, "I started dating when I was about 19 years old. I kept getting the same kind of guy, which was the wrong kind of guy." She went on, "They would either say they were only into me in private or cheat on me, or they would have mental problems, and I thought I was the best place for them to get better. I thought, oh, I can change them. And it was always something. Something would always happen. I was unmarried for 2 years before Jay because I had had enough." Jay, who is 28, and Pamela met on the internet in 2019. They lived in different states, so they called and texted each other for 7 months before they ultimately met in person. Jay went to Kansas City, Missouri, to spend time with Pamela and her family during the 2019 holidays. Pamela eventually moved to Canton, Georgia, to be with Jay. They now live in the remodeled basement of Jay's parents' house. Jay asked Pamela to marry him in November 2022, and she posted the news on Instagram. "I said yes to us, to his family, ours, and to forever," she wrote next to a carousel of pictures. "I can't wait for the day we say I do and the future." I changed from saying, "I'm never getting married," to "I can't wait to be married." Thank you, Carino, for making this so unique and more than I could have anticipated. Thank you to his family, who is also my family, for being a part of it. We want to thank everyone who sent us their best wishes. When Jay and Pamela were young, they were both diagnosed with osteogenesis imperfecta type 3, and their futures didn't look promising. The disease, also called brittle bone disease, makes bones weak and easy to break, and it causes long-lasting pain. Pamela and Jay have broken more than 400 bones between them over the years, but that doesn't stop them from living their lives to the fullest. Jay said in a prior episode, "Our condition is very rare. My parents said I wouldn't live past 5. They gave me less time." Pamela joined in and said, "Made it." Jay and Pamela want to buy their own home, but they've run into some problems locating one that works for them because of their health issues. The pair wants greater freedom and solitude. They want to move out of the basement and into their own place someday. But they can't agree on where that should be. TLC said in a press release for Jay and Pamela before the episode premiered in March. Jay is fine with living in the suburbs, but Pamela, who has been living in the basement for years and is ready to move to the city, would love to do so. But it's harder than they thought to locate a facility that matches their needs as disabled power chair users. Manuel and Pamela Chavez's health condition, their genetic disorder, explained. On March 4, 2025, TLC viewers met Manuel and Pamela Chavez. Many people were curious about what health problems the Jay and Pamela personalities have. Manuel, who is 28, and Pamela Chavez, who is 30, both share the same very rare genetic condition. Let's examine more closely at how it affects their daily life. The Cleveland Clinic says that Jay and Pamela have osteogenesis imperfecta type 3, OI, which makes their bones weak. Jay said on the broadcast, "Our condition is very rare. My parents were told I wouldn't live past 5. They gave me less time," Pamela said. "They told me I would die before I turned 1. Made it." With osteogenesis imperfecta type 3, it makes bones weak, she said, "so we break easily." Jay added that he and Pamela have broken more than 400 bones between them. He said, "It can be as simple as getting out of bed and taking a deep breath." Pamela agreed, "I literally have a broken rib right now." Jay and Pamela had been together for 5 years when the series started. They met online when she was in Kansas City, Missouri, and he lived in Canton, Georgia. Pamela moved in with Jay and his parents, Raphael and Renee, after dating long distance for approximately a year. Both of them work from home. Mini Producer is Jay's stage moniker as a music producer. Pamela, on the other hand, works for a large corporate company on its bilingual team. The Brittle Bone Society says that patients with osteogenesis imperfecta type 3 can have kids. People with OI can also have a baby. However, it depends on how bad their symptoms are. If one individual in a couple has OI, there is a 50% risk that their child will also have OI. No more today. What are you thinking about this gossip today? Let us know in the comments and stay tuned by subscribing to our channel to get more updates like this. Thank you.